Hello, everybody. We're just going to gather the few people out in the lobby and close the doors and get started. So I hope everybody enjoyed their lunch. Thank you again to the facility here for doing a fabulous job. And again, if you have a little time on your coffee break, to grab a view of the virtual lab in the bus in the parking lot. Thought it was important this afternoon to start off with a discussion about the entire nuclear fuel cycle and to have experts in everything from initial extraction to transportation and the use along the way towards our homes and businesses. So with that, I'm going to let Jamie Israel take over, introduce himself, and introduce everybody. And I hope you enjoy. There is a course that takes 3.5 days to walk through this.
And there's a test.
And there's a test at the end. So they're going to cover this pretty quickly. I also forgot to mention earlier that there is a survey if anybody wants to complete about what you wanted out of the conference. And then there's a survey for post-conference to give us some feedback on how you feel about things going. So thank you very much. And with that, I'll hand it off to Jamie.
Thank you. Appreciate this opportunity. I don't know what's worse, being the group before lunch or after lunch, so I would just ask to make sure the air conditioning is turned down so no one will fall asleep during this session. But what we're going to do now is basically we've heard about uranium. Well, uranium is only one portion of the front-end fuel cycle for light water reactors. So with this distinguished panel, we're going to discuss all the steps, including even an end user, in what is considered the nuclear fuel cycle. Sitting here to my left is Wayne Heili, Director of at enCore Energy. Next to him is Chris Frankland, who's the Director of Sales and Marketing for Nuclear Fuels Corporation. Next to him is Paul Lorskulsint. I hope I got that right, Paul. I apologize. He's the Chief Nuclear Officer at Urenco's enrichment facility down in Eunice here. And then we have Kevin Loyens, Chief Commercial Officer for TAM International, a global freight forwarding shipping company. And then Karen Radosevich. Am I close? Sorry.
Very close.
There we go. Senior Manager, Nuclear Fuel Supply for Entergy, who is a multi-reactor operator in the South, Mississippi, Louisiana, Arkansas, Texas. And then finally we have Mahesh Goenka.
Close, yeah.
Okay. Who's also Director of Old Economy Consulting Firm. He'll talk about some supply and demand imbalances. So. And then my name is James Israel. I'm the Senior Director of Business Development for enCore Corporation, a uranium extraction company currently operating in Texas. A bit of background from me. My career spans more than 35 years. There's some people out in the audience that I remember on day one. This is just a fantastic industry, and it's great to see such a well-attended conference here to talk about nuclear energy. So as I said, the fuel cycle, we start with uranium and we refine it into what is called yellow cake. For nuclear power, we need the U-235 atom to create the fission required. And in natural uranium, it's about 0.711% U-235. So once that's refined, oops, here it is. Sorry about that. Let's get to the fun stuff. We've seen this before from John this morning, but you have, the uranium is extracted, it's processed, and it's refined into what we call yellow cake or U308. It's then transported to a converter. After the conversion, it goes to an enrichment facility, fabrication facility, and then to the nuclear plant. We'll hear more specifics about those individual processes during our presentation. Now, uranium is extremely abundant around the world, including here in the western United States. And it can be extracted either as a hard ore versus, via an open pit, underground mine, or solution via in situ recovery. It all depends upon the type of ore body. Currently in the United States, we have production at both hard ore in Arizona, and then ISR production in both Wyoming and Texas, with many more facilities to be added in states such as South Dakota, Utah, and possibly even Eastern Oregon. So once the uranium is extracted, it's milled, purified, and the picture there is drums of yellow cake. Each one of those drums can hold about 850 pounds of yellow cake. The yellow cake then is shipped to a uranium conversion facility. In the United States, we currently have one. It's in Metropolis, Illinois, home of Superman. They don't have it. The Daily Planet is no longer in publication, but the Weekly Planet, I think, still is, correct? So you can go there and see the Superman statue in downtown Metropolis. It's a hoot. But anyway, during this process, it's introduced to fluorine and create UF6. And what you're seeing here is a small test tube of UF6, and it's a white crystal when it goes from a gas to a liquid to a solid as it cools. Kind of looks like rock candy. So, let's see here. Then after conversion, as I said, the U-235 is at about 0.711 natural. Then we send it to an enricher. These are centrifuges, and Paul will speak more about this in his presentation. But basically what enrichment does, it robs from Peter to feed Paul. So when you remove the 235 from one, you give it to the other, it goes from 0.711 maybe down to 0.685, and from 0.711 up, but close enough, Paul. But you keep doing that until you get to an enrichment level of between 3 and 5%. Current light water fleets use anywhere between 3 and 5%. There's some new technologies, we call it LEU plus, that can go up to about 7 or 8%. And then there's Heili, which has been in the news, is high assay, low enriched. That can go up to 19%. Some of the smaller reactors are using that, but up to 4 to 5%. So it takes a lot of uranium to make a smaller amount of enriched product. Then it goes to fabrication, where, again, the gas, because it's shipped enriched UF6, is converted back to an oxide. And those are uranium pellets that are done at the fabricator. In the United States, we have 3 operating fabrication facilities, one in Richland, Washington, one in Wilmington, North Carolina, and one in Columbia, South Carolina. Now, some interesting, that shows you there, filled 48Ys, just how we transport it. That's UF6. Enriched UF6 are smaller, they're called 30Bs, and they also take overpacks because of their enriched uranium. That's natural uranium there. Some fun facts. Again, we heard this morning, one pellet equates to about 1 ton of coal, but on an annual basis for fuel, one reload replaces about 3.5 million pounds of coal, 12 million barrels of oil, and 77 billion cubic feet of natural gas. So these reactors operate 24/7 for 18 to 24 months. So I think we've heard before, base load power. And one of the things about SMRs, they're going to be baseload power, but at much smaller capacity because the large capacity of 1,200 megawatts is not required in all applications or all places in the United States. We've talked about the new micro reactors for defense purposes at military installations and such. So, but over the last, I'd say, well, since the invasion, really, but the last two administrations, starting with the Biden administration and now with the current administration, nuclear is starting to get its due respect as far as zero carbon to the to the environment. Where once before everyone talked about wind and solar, they are now talking about nuclear power, and nuclear power is growing in its popularity not just in the United States, where it's been stated that we want to go from 100 reactors to possibly 400 reactors in the United States by 2050. That is a very large goal. Doesn't mean we can't do it, but it will take a lot of work from both industry and government to get that done. So now I'm going to turn it over to our panel, and we'll have some Q&A also, and then Q&A from the floor. So thank you.
So hello. Again, I'm Wayne Heili, and thank you for attending this conference. I'm a career-long uranium recovery specialist with a degree in metallurgical engineering. What, you say? You know, most people do. What's metallurgy? Well, the branch of metallurgy that I studied was essentially learning how to extract metals from minerals. And it's a little obscure, but fascinating, and you'll have to trust me on that. I presently serve in the board of directors of enCore Energy, but I've been working in the uranium recovery industry in the United States since the late 1980s. My first job was at a conventional uranium mill in South Texas. After that, my career turned towards the practice of in situ recovery of uranium, and I moved to Wyoming, and that's where I've made my home for over 25 years now. I was there when the uranium industry struggled in poor markets, when regulators brought stronger rules into enforcement, and when the U.S. production fell to essentially zero. And the industry turned to remediation and reclamation activities to keep a few of us around. And I was there when the public embrace of nuclear energy declined in the face of highly publicized events like Fukushima and Chernobyl. Nevertheless, being in any one industry for almost 40 years will generally make you an advocate for that industry, and I'm undeniably an advocate. In my home state of Wyoming, I've been spending many hours in efforts to educate the public on matters related to uranium recovery and the nuclear industry as a whole. And back home, I'm rather known for my ability to take technical subjects and speak about them with clarity and relatability in an understandable way. So today I want to share with you not a whole bunch about uranium recovery, but a message of encouragement. We could talk about uranium recovery during the panel portion, but for me this is advocacy, and I want to talk about this a little bit. Are you here because you're unclear about uranium or unclear about nuclear? I want to acknowledge the Clean Energy Association of New Mexico for hosting this conference. It may be the first major effort to give this state a clear, unvarnished look at the nuclear industry, its history, its risks, its opportunities, and its relevance to New Mexico. New Mexico needs that clarity because you're standing at an inflection point. That will determine the economic future of this state. Other places have been there before. In the late 1970s, when Wyoming's Powder River Basin coal seams first drew national attention, the reaction in Wyoming's Campbell County was not celebration, it was fear. People worried about water, air quality, property values, environmental damage, and the character of their communities. Some predicted that coal development would ruin the region, But history shows coal became the economic backbone of Wyoming. For a half a century now, it funded schools, infrastructure, parks, and the quality of life that we enjoy there today. The city of Gillette, Wyoming was transformed from a dusty outpost to a thriving community, a transient community to one where people choose to live and raise their families today. My son and 3 grandchildren live in Gillette. And Campbell County has become an economic powerhouse for Wyoming, a state that enjoys low taxes, no personal income tax, balanced budgets, and a large rainy day state savings account. None of that happened because coal was risk-free. It happened because Wyoming leaned into and learned how to manage those risks responsibly. They built regulations, improved technology, and held companies accountable. Over time, the unknown became the understood. Today, nuclear energy is generating the same mix of promise, risks, misunderstanding, and political distortion that coal once did. The nation's expressing a renewed interest in nuclear energy and uranium extraction and advanced reactors and everything in between. Whether you feel ready or not, the nuclear industry is arriving at your doorstep. To navigate this moment, we must start with honesty about the past. The early history of nuclear development in the United States is complicated and in many cases painful. Much of it grew out of the Manhattan Project and the race to develop nuclear weapons. The science was new, the risks were poorly understood, the environmental safeguards were almost non-existent. Communities across the country, including here in New Mexico, are still dealing with the consequences of that era. Those harms were real, and they should never be minimized. But it's equally true that the nuclear industry today is not the nuclear industry of the 1940s, 50s, or even the 70s. The scientific understanding has grown, our regulatory framework has matured. The U.S. Nuclear Regulatory Commission is one of the most stringent regulatory bodies in the world, and New Mexico itself has a very robust system for monitoring land, water, and air quality in all forms of industrial activity. We have learned from the past, and we have built guardrails to prevent repeating it. That's why fear-based rhetoric does not serve us well. Some people respond to nuclear proposals with the same kind of assumptions and predictions that once surrounded coal in Wyoming: catastrophe, contamination, and the belief that any new industry is a threat rather than an opportunity. Others calling for local government control to decide which private businesses should be allowed to operate. But, that approach doesn't really align with the long-standing conservative principles that government should regulate responsibly and not arbitrarily, and it should not block lawful enterprises. Regulation is necessary. Oversight is necessary. But using government power to shut down business simply because it's unfamiliar or politically unpopular, that's not consistent with the values of most people. The question before us is not whether nuclear energy is perfect or risk-free. It isn't. No industry is. The question is whether New Mexico will approach this moment with the same clear-eyed seriousness that allowed Wyoming to harness coal responsibly and build decades of prosperity. We can acknowledge historical harms without being paralyzed by them. We can recognize modern safeguards without pretending risks don't exist. We can reaffirm the principle that government's role is to protect the public health and the environment, but not to be picking winners and losers in the private sector. New Mexico has a chance to shape the next 50 years of its energy economy, but only if you resist the temptation to let fear, misunderstanding, or political distortion drive the conversation. We've seen the inflection point like this before. If you choose responsibility over panic, New Mexico will prosper. So with that, I hope you're investment in coming to this conference generates an understanding of the inherent safety and the benefits of the entire nuclear energy industry. Thanks for listening.